Meghan still has not established an identity of her own.
Meghan Markle has come under fire. Prince Philip, he allegedly gave Prince Harry a warning about getting married to Meghan Markle.
DNA claims have ignited a royal firestorm. A new wave of DNA-related claims has reportedly triggered a furious reaction from Harry, pulling Tom Bower and Lady Colin Campbell directly into the center of a controversy that is now spreading far beyond private circles. What began as quiet speculation has quickly escalated into a situation that insiders describe as tense and deeply personal, with questions being raised about what exactly was said, who said it first, and why the response has been so immediate and intense. So what are these claims, and why are they causing such a strong reaction now, at this moment, and in this way? Join us as we uncover the full story behind the escalating controversy surrounding Harry, Tom Bower, and Lady Colin Campbell, the two people driving this conversation. Before getting into what has actually been claimed, let's delve a little into the person making these claims, because that matters enormously in terms of how seriously the arguments deserve to be considered. Tom Bower did not start his career writing about the royal family. He built his reputation over decades as one of Britain's most rigorous investigative biographers.
Meghan is a person who controls the narrative, who had become part of the royal family she couldn't understand.
Working through subjects that included powerful media moguls, politicians, and business figures who had significant resources and motivation to push back against uncomfortable scrutiny. His method has always been the same across every book he has written. Go directly to the people who were present, build the account from the inside out, and let the sourcing carry the argument rather than letting assertion do the work that evidence should do. He doesn't write from the outside looking in at a subject he doesn't have access to. He writes from the conversations he was able to have with people who were actually in the room when things happened. That background is the reason his latest book, Betrayal, carried the weight it did when it landed in March 2026. Within days of release, it went straight to #1 on the Sunday Times bestseller list. That kind of commercial response doesn't happen through marketing alone. It happens when a book touches something that a large number of people have been waiting for someone credible and accountable to address in print with their name on the cover. Lady Colin Campbell, on the other hand, operates in a different way but carries her own kind of authority in this space. She has spent years building detailed, sustained arguments across television appearances and online platforms that draw audiences in the millions consistently. She is not an anonymous commentator posting theories without accountability into the void of the internet. She uses her name, title, and her claims in public spaces where she can be directly challenged, questioned, and held responsible for what she has said. And when she makes an argument, she attaches herself to it in a way that carries genuine personal and professional consequences if she turns out to be wrong. That kind of accountability distinguishes what she does from the ordinary background noise of royal gossip that fills comment sections and social media feeds. Between these two figures, across a best-selling book and years of documented public commentary watched by millions, a set of questions has been assembled that goes well beyond the usual territory of royal gossip and palace intrigue. It touches something more serious in terms of documentation, timeline, and constitutional principle. And understanding exactly what those questions are is the only way to understand why this conversation refuses to close. What they are both saying about Harry and Meghan's children is what makes this story unlike anything else in modern royal coverage. So what exactly are they saying, and why did it spark a devastating reaction? What Bower's book actually revealed. Nearly 500 pages is a lot of ground to cover, and Betrayal moves through a wide range of territory, documenting aspects of Harry and Meghan's life and decision-making that had either never been reported before or had previously existed only in fragments without the full surrounding context. There are accounts of confrontations inside palace walls, including an alleged meeting at Kensington Palace where an attempt to ease family tensions apparently escalated rapidly, with Meghan reportedly telling Prince William to remove his finger from her face while Harry stood by without intervening. That moment became one of the most discussed passages in the entire book, and royal watchers spent considerable energy debating its accuracy and significance in the weeks following publication. The book also goes into the financial architecture of Archwell, the couple's nonprofit organization,
Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, the Archwell Foundation, a non-profit organization founded by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex,
raising questions about how money moved through the operation and whether the governance reflected what donors and the public had been led to believe. Meghan's Netflix deal was also explicitly discussed in the book, with Bauer suggesting the platform's actual support for her projects was considerably weaker than the public partnership had implied, raising questions about whether the arrangement ever represented what it appeared to on the surface. Throughout all of it, Bauer builds a portrait of Meghan as someone who operates with extraordinary deliberateness.
Meghan came along into the scene. I just thought, this is fascinating. How is this going to play out? To tell the truth, I spoke to very few friends of Meghan.
His characterization is of a person who never acts without calculating the effect of that action, who manages relationships entirely in terms of their usefulness, and who removes people from her circle with complete precision when they no longer serve her interests. Her father experienced this, the royal family experienced it, and people who worked with her professionally have described versions of the same pattern. That portrait, which became one of the most repeated takeaways from the entire book, also sets up the more serious questions Bauer raises later. Because if someone operates with that level of calculation in every other dimension of their life, what does that mean for the decisions they have made around the most emotionally resonant parts of their public story? Harry and Meghan's team responded sharply when the book became public. Multiple claims were rejected outright. The word conspiracy was deployed more than once. Critics of the couple were described in terms that suggested obsession rather than legitimate inquiry. But the response had an unexpected consequence. Instead of cooling the conversation, it drew fresh attention to the book from people who hadn't been closely following the story. Suddenly, a new audience was looking up exactly what had been claimed and trying to understand why the reaction to it was as intense as it was. And when that new audience started reading, the questions about the children were the ones that stopped them cold. The questions around Archie's birth. The public account of Archie's birth has always existed in a space where certain details didn't sit comfortably alongside each other.
Meghan and myself had a baby boy early this morning, a very healthy boy. Mother and baby are doing incredibly well.
Lady Campbell was among the first people with a serious public platform to put this observation into specific, nameable terms. Here is the core tension. After Archie was born, Harry and Meghan gave their first major interview about his arrival to CBS News. During that conversation, Meghan stated that she had never intended to give birth in a hospital at all. Her original plan, she said, was a home birth. That statement was offered casually, as context for how things had ultimately unfolded, but it sat in direct contradiction to the Portland hospital story that had already been widely reported and accepted as the official account of where Archie came into the world. When commentators placed these two versions side by side, the gap between them was obvious. Either the home birth intention was accurate and the Portland hospital story required significant qualification, or the CBS interview contained a statement that didn't reflect what had actually happened. Both versions could not be fully true at the same time without a significant amount of explanation that was never provided. Bauer pressed the timeline further in Betrayal, raising questions about whether May 6th is actually the accurate birth date and whether the sequence of events the public was given reflects what the documented record actually shows. These are not rhetorical gestures. They are requests for the kind of basic factual clarity that should be straightforward to provide. Then there is a moment that most people missed in real time, but which spread extensively once royal watchers flagged it. At Harry's first public appearance with Archie, at a point when the baby was officially just 2 days old, Harry made a comment about how extraordinary it was to watch how much babies change in 2 weeks. Not 2 days, 2 weeks. The discrepancy passed quickly in the moment. Harry was in front of cameras with a newborn, clearly emotional, and it would be easy under those circumstances to say something imprecise. Supporters of the couple make exactly that argument, and it deserves acknowledgement as a reasonable explanation. But Lady C's position is that this moment didn't exist in isolation. It existed inside a pattern that included the CBS interview contradiction, the questions about the date, and the way the surrounding narrative about the birth seemed to adjust itself depending on which platform and which audience it was being told to. Individually, Each of these things has an explanation. Together, they form a picture that Lady C has argued cannot be dismissed as coincidence and casual error. What came next, with the second birth, raised questions that went further still. The questions around Lilibet's arrival. If the questions around Archie's birth were about the inconsistencies in narration and the unexplained gaps, what emerged around Lilibet's arrival involved official documents, and that changed the nature of the conversation considerably. The surface story of Lilibet's birth is simple and clean. June 2021, Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital, a healthy baby girl. That version went out to the world, and for much of the public, that's the complete story.
New addition to the Sussex family. Meghan and Harry making the surprise announcement Sunday, saying Lily was born Friday morning.
But Lady C and Bauer both looked at the surrounding details and found a picture that didn't sit together as smoothly as the headline suggested. The detail that generated the most immediate discussion was the taco stop. According to accounts that circulated and were picked up by multiple royal commentators, Meghan was reportedly hungry during active labor and made a stop for food en route to the hospital. On its own, this might sound like an unusual but not impossible anecdote, the kind of detail that gets retold as a funny story in later years. Lady C's response to it was direct and medical in its framing. Active labor is not a mild or manageable experience for most women. It is physically intense, it progresses quickly, and the window between manageable discomfort and urgent need can close faster than most people who haven't experienced it fully appreciate. The detail, Lady C argued plainly, did not match any reasonable understanding of what active labor actually involves. Either the labor wasn't progressing in the way a typical active labor would at that stage, or the timeline of events being described didn't accurately reflect what was actually happening in that moment. Then came the announcement gap. After Lilibet was reportedly born, the public was not informed for 48 hours. In the context of the royal family, where births are announced with considerable speed and where dedicated media teams exist precisely to manage this kind of communication, a 2-day gap is not routine. Lady C addressed this directly, raising the possibility publicly that the delay existed because the baby had not yet arrived in the conventional sense at the time the gap began. That implication was clear and pointed. It was made publicly, on record, to large audiences. It was never directly answered. The birth certificate itself brought its own set of complications. Lady C flagged a specific detail publicly that drew significant attention across royal commentary platforms. According to her reading of the document, a state area code associated with Colorado appeared on a certificate for a birth that was officially recorded as having taken place in California. California and Colorado carry different codes, and the distinction between them is not a minor administrative detail. If the reading of the certificate Lady C described is accurate, it raises an immediate question about where the birth actually occurred and under what circumstances the document was filed. This detail spread quickly, was debated extensively, and has never been publicly addressed with a clear, documented correction from the couple's representatives. Finally, and perhaps most quietly significant of all, the medical professional publicly associated with Lilibet's birth closed her practice at the end of that same month. No explanation was offered publicly, and there was also no statement made. She simply ceased practicing and stepped out of any further public engagement on the subject. Lady C described this as deeply notable. Bauer included it in his broader examination of the surrounding circumstances. Neither went beyond what the documented facts showed, but both made clear they viewed it as a data point that deserved serious consideration rather than silence. Each of these details carries an individual explanation. Together, they form something that has proven much harder to set aside: what people saw on their screens. Beyond documents and timelines, a separate thread of this conversation is built around something far more immediate and visually accessible. It is about what millions of people watched on their screens during both pregnancies, in real time, and what those images appeared to show. Lady C used a specific word when describing what she observed about Meghan's physical presentation during the Archie pregnancy. She called it performed. That word landed immediately and divided opinion sharply. Supporters of the couple described the characterization as cruel and without basis, the kind of commentary no woman should have to endure about her body or her pregnancy. Critics said Lady C was describing something that was documented in widely available photographs and video footage that anyone with access to the internet could go back and examine for themselves. The core observation was that Meghan's bump appeared noticeably different from one public appearance to the next in ways that seemed to go beyond what natural week-to-week pregnancy progression would typically produce. There were specific appearances that were cited repeatedly. The purple dress appearance and the red coat appearance became reference points that commentators and online communities went back to again and again, placing them in chronological order and examining the differences between them. Before going any further, the counter-argument here needs to be stated honestly and completely, because responsible coverage of this subject requires it. Pregnancies vary enormously between women. Some women carry in ways that appear dramatically different, depending on the outfit, the posture, the angle of a camera, and the specific stage of the day. Some women remain highly physically active and mobile right up until labor in ways that appear remarkable to outside observers, but are entirely consistent with a healthy pregnancy. Making confident conclusions from selected photographs is not the same as producing evidence. It is inference, and inference from visual observation carries significant limitations that anyone engaging with this subject honestly has to acknowledge. Lady C has acknowledged this limitation explicitly. Her response to it, however, is that she did not rely solely on personal visual observation. She has stated publicly that she consulted with medical professionals, nurses, and women with direct pregnancy experience before speaking on the subject. She described those conversations as producing consistent observations that the visual details being examined raised legitimate questions that simple, natural variation could not fully account for. She was not presenting this as a casual opinion. She was presenting it as a conclusion reached after deliberate consultation with her name attached. The image that cut through the noise most sharply was the dog shelter visit. At a point when Meghan was reportedly around 8 months pregnant, she visited an animal shelter, was photographed in high heels, crouched to the floor to interact with dogs, and rose again without any visible physical assistance. Those images circulated immediately and divided people in exactly the way everything else in this story divides people. 8 months pregnant in heels, crouching and rising without support. Critics argued this combination would be physically extremely difficult for most women at that stage. However, supporters argued that every pregnancy is different and that drawing conclusions from a photograph is inherently limited and potentially harmful. Both positions are honest responses to an image that cannot, by itself, settle anything. What Lady C added to this thread was the observation that not one medical professional has publicly signed off on either birth. Not for Archie, not for Lilibet. Placed against every comparable royal birth in recent memory. Diana's children, Beatrice, Eugenie, Catherine's 3 children, where hospitals were confirmed, doctors were named, and the public record was complete and readily accessible. That absence stands out in a way that is difficult to explain away. And then there was the name, and what the name revealed. The silence. When Harry and Meghan announced that they were naming their daughter Lilibet Diana, the initial media response across the United Kingdom and the United States was almost uniformly warm. A grieving son honoring the Queen and his mother simultaneously.
More specifically, her name, Lilibet, became the Queen's nickname from an early age. It was the way that she pronounced Elizabeth.
At a moment when his relationship with the palace was already deeply fractured, choosing the most personal of all possible tributes. The story wrote itself, and most outlets ran with it immediately without looking much further. Lady C looked further. Her account of the actual reaction inside the palace was the direct opposite of the warm headlines. She described cold fury, deep consternation, and a sense of violation among those closest to the Queen. Not quiet gratitude, not private warmth, but a reaction that was the emotional inverse of what was being reported publicly. The reason, Lady C explained, was the specific and deeply private nature of what that name actually was. Lilibet was not a public nickname. It was not a name the Queen had used in any official capacity or shared broadly with the world. It was intensely personal, originating in her early childhood and used across decades almost exclusively by Prince Philip. It was the name he called her throughout a marriage that spanned over 7 decades. When Philip died in April 2021, that name became something even more charged. A piece of a relationship that was gone, the most private remaining connection to the person who had known her longest. Using it required something, an acknowledgement of what it meant and who it belonged to. Whether that conversation happened has been disputed publicly. Then came the commercial dimension. Reports emerged of filings connected to the name Lilibet made around the period of the announcement. The timing raised questions that Lady C addressed directly. If the name was purely a sentimental tribute chosen from grief and love, the commercial activity running alongside it sat uncomfortably with that framing. Bauer's portrait of the couple throughout Betrayal is of 2 people who consistently make decisions, including deeply personal ones, that align with long-term commercial positioning. The name, in that reading, was not separate from the strategy. It was part of it. The signal that cut through most sharply, however, came not from a commentator, but from the palace itself. When William and Catherine released their public congratulations on Lilibet's birth, they referred to the baby as Lily, not Lilibet, Lily. In a formal public statement from the Prince and Princess of Wales, where every word is considered and deliberate and nothing is accidental, the choice to use a diminutive rather than the announced name was not casual editing. Lady C argued that it was a carefully measured signal, a quiet but unmistakable indication of exactly how the name had been received. The palace was not going to validate the framing Harry and Meghan had placed around it. One word, one deliberate substitution, communicating what official channels would never say aloud. What makes the name discussion significant in the context of this larger story is not the name itself. It is what the surrounding choices reveal about the pattern Bauer and Lady C have both been documenting across years of sustained, named public commentary. Every decision in Bauer's framing serves a purpose. Every gesture has a calculation behind it. And beneath all of it sits a legal and constitutional argument that most people haven't fully processed, one that changes the entire nature of this debate. The royal family is not a private institution. It is a constitutional one, operating under legal frameworks that extend across the United Kingdom and every Commonwealth realm that still recognizes the crown. Lady C's argument is that the circumstances surrounding the birth of children connected to the royal succession are not personal matters that fall within the ordinary right to privacy. They are matters of national governance and constitutional law, and the public has a legitimate interest in the accuracy of the records surrounding them. That framing transforms what might otherwise look like intrusive gossip about a private family into something with a different legal and constitutional character entirely. And from there, the legal silence becomes the most important element of the entire story. Harry and Meghan have demonstrated clearly and repeatedly that they are prepared to use the legal system when they believe they have been wronged. They have taken major newspapers to court. They have pursued privacy cases through extended proceedings. They have shown, beyond any reasonable doubt, that litigation is not a path they are afraid to walk when they feel it is necessary, which makes the complete absence of any legal challenge to either Tom Bauer or Lady Colin Campbell over claims that go directly to the parentage of their children, one of the most discussed silences in everything this debate has produced. Lady C addressed this directly. When asked about the possibility of being sued over what she has said publicly, she stated that she would not mind if they sued as long as they lost. Her reasoning was immediate and specific. Meghan, she argued, would not want to be cross-examined under oath in a courtroom, not because she has something to hide, but because a courtroom is a different environment from a spokesperson's statement. It requires documentation. It requires consistency under direct questioning. It requires the full weight of the legal process, where describing something as a conspiracy theory carries no legal standing and only verifiable facts carry any weight at all. No legal challenge has come. Neither Bauer nor Lady C has faced action over these intriguing claims that go to the heart of this debate. That silence sits alongside every other silence in this story. No named medical professionals, no settled documentation, no direct public response to questions that have moved from online speculation into mainstream commentary on both sides of the Atlantic. If the answers are simple, if the record is clean and clear and easily demonstrable, The obvious question is why the conversation keeps getting louder rather than quieter. Every book that lands at #1, every television appearance that clips and spreads, every legal challenge that doesn't materialize, adds another layer to a silence that the couple has, for reasons of their own, chosen to maintain. Do you think Harry and Meghan have a responsibility to address these specific questions publicly? Or does the right to privacy outweigh the constitutional arguments Lady C is making? And if the documentation is as straightforward as their representatives have implied, what do you think is stopping them from simply making it available? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.